Thank you, Mr. CEO. Our keynote address, our keynote speaker, the Honorable Minister Mamaloko Ngubane, holds a master's degree in public and development management from the University of the Witwatersrand School of Governance and a Bachelor of Arts from Vista University. Minister Ngubane is a keen and approachable youth activist, as is witnessed by her approachable manner, both in the streets as well as in the streets of Twitter, of course. For those that have been asking me how we got the minister, that is how we managed to get a hold of him. Now Stan talk about being disruptive and radically reinventing protocol. The Honourable Minister is a former member of the Provincial Executive Committee of the Gauteng ANC Youth League and has served as chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Transport for the City of Johannesburg. She has proven leadership skills, having served as a leadership consultant at First National Bank, a skills development manager and facilitator at the National Health Laboratory Services, an ANC Proportional Representative Councillor in the City of Johannesburg, and a Director for Special Projects in the Office of the Deputy President. Her Excellency the Minister has been a Member of Parliament since 2009 and has served as Committee Whip for the Portfolio Committees on Basic Education and Higher Education. She has also served as a Parliamentary Advisor to the then Deputy President, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. Minister Ngubane has proven leadership credentials and portfolios that relate to our electrical engineering profession. Minister Ngubane is a former chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Telecommunications and Postal Services. Subsequent to that, she became Minister of the Department of Energy and then moved to the Ministry of Communications as Minister. As you all know, she has been recently appointed as the Minister of Science and Technology for the Republic. Please help me welcome Honourable Minister Mamaloko Ngubane.
Yeah, I'm gonna send a tweet now and get out. Thank you very much, Program Director. Let me first do the acknowledgement so that I don't get myself in trouble. The President-elect, Dr. Henry Golden Hayes, SAIEE CEO, Mr. Stan Bridgens, SAIEE CGC Chairperson, Ms. Tsegofatso Cornelius, past presidents and members of Council, members of the CGC Committee. Indeed, actually my advisor asked me how did I know about this thing, because he's an engineer and he's your member. So when I came to tell him, no, I've agreed to go and address this because my office knows that's how I sometimes do things. They battle with my dad. So they had to do some twiggling for me to be here. But I think for me, it's a great honor and privilege to be invited here to come and join. And I just had a moment with my colleague there who we've known each other in the energy portfolio. So we were catching up on energy issues. I say I enjoy this field together, especially the more focused areas, because you get to learn a lot. So when I got into energy, I didn't know what was transmission lines. Today I can talk about transmission lines in South African power pool and issues of embedded generation with confidence. But in these few weeks, 3 weeks that I've been here CEO, I'm battling to learn some of the words in science and technology. So I'm Tsonga speaking person. So now I tended within these 3 weeks found a lot of words that have X. Now in my home language, X is she. Now when you say xyloton, I want to say shinoton. So that's part of adjusting Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think let me just appreciate this privilege to be here and start just quoting a wise German radical who once said I quote, "Philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it." Close quote. The name of the wise German was Karl Marx, the founder of scientific communism. You could be asking yourself, what has the founder of the communist movement have to do with engineering? I have quoted the foregoing statement because it speaks directly to what we are concerned here about today: radical change and disruption. In addition, the statement also speaks about another thing that a young, radical, and disruptive engineer will have to possess in order to effect change, and that is scientific interpretation of the world as it exists today. The world is undergoing a fundamental transformation that others have termed the fourth industrial revolution. When you talk to our colleagues in China, they contest to this, that that's not a fourth industrial revolution, but that's a debate for another day. This revolution is underpinned by automation of production systems, artificial intelligence, cyber-physical systems, 3D printing, and Internet of Things. And others, we argue with our colleagues in government, those who are in the telecoms, my also portfolio, who are arguing that this is a digital industrial revolution, which we are arguing it's not. So it's one of those things that once you get into the space as well, debates gets into it. It is evident by the foregoing that at the center of this revolution is engineering. We will recall that the first industrial revolution was based on the mechanization of the textile industry. The second revolution kick-started by Henry Ford when he introduced the assembly line in his car manufacturing plant, which led to mass production. Underlying the assembly line was an important discovery of electricity, the result of which today we have electrical engineer thanks to Mr. Faraday. And then came the third industrial revolution, which was premised on the advent of the internet. Most of us call it the digital industrial revolution. It was during this period in the 1950s that we saw a shift from analog systems to digital systems. Don't ask me as former Minister of Communication whether we have migrated from analog to digital. In other words, there was a digital revolution. In all this revolution, it should be noted that all three of them led to increased productivity, and as a result, they created more jobs than they destroyed. And another important factor to note is that engineering has always been at the center of these revolutions, and already mentioned the fourth industrial revolution is no exception. It can be argued that technological advancement driven by scientists and engineering has been driving force behind making the world a better place today. What does it mean to be a young, radical, and disruptive engineer in the era of the fourth industrial revolution? The self-same Marx that I've quoted earlier wrote again in a letter addressed to his father titled, I quote, his father titled Reflection of a Young Man on the Choice of a Profession. In it he wrote, I quote, "One who chooses a profession he values highly will shudder at the idea of being unworthy of it. He will act nobly, if only because his position in society is a noble one. But the chief guide which must direct us in the choice of a profession is the welfare of mankind and our perfection. It should not be thought that these two interests could be in conflict, that one would have to destroy the other, or the contrary, man's nature is so constituted that he can attain his own perfection only by working for the perfection, for the good of his fellow men, unquote. Critical in what Marx raises is the extract is the importance of making choices in one's profession that are aimed at working for the good of fellow men. This means that a young engineer has to understand that he or she is an engineer in a society, and whatever he or she does will have an impact in society, be it positive or negative. I'm quite certain that people who are here today, who call themselves engineers, have chosen this profession because they value it highly and they will shudder at the idea of being unworthy of it. Moving on, Program Director, just to say, when you look at Harvard psychology professor as well, Steven Pinker, in his recently published book titled Enlightenment Now, The Case for Reason, Science, Humanism, and Progress, argues that humanity has made significant progress over the past 100 years, and none of us can argue with that. With a mass of data, he has showed that extreme poverty has gone from affecting 90% of the world's population to only 10%. Literacy has increased from 15% to about 85%. And for us, it's to reflect if this is what South Africa is. Lifespan has increased from 30 to 70 years worldwide, even up to 80 years in the developed world. The professor makes a compelling case for why we should be appreciative of the progress that has been made over the years. However, as South Africans, we are aware that our country is facing serious challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. We are one of the most unequal countries in the world, if not the most unequal country. With the understanding that in the fourth industrial revolution will consist of the technological advancement that will lead to increased productivity, however, with greatly reduced human labor absorption. It is incumbent upon all of us to work together to find solutions to our challenges. Again, you could be asking yourselves, why an engineer who works better with machines should concern themselves with labor absorption in the economy? We should bear in mind that the fourth industrial revolution will bring to the fore Internet of Things, which more sophisticated conversations between machines without human interventions, and more importantly, a much closer interface between machines and humans. In fact, I venture to say the separation between machines and humans will be the thing of the past. An example of this is when back in 2016, robotic arm was surgically wired directly to Nathan Copeland's brain, providing him with two-way feedback and an almost natural sensation of touch. The 20-year-old American had lost sensation from the chest downwards 10 years before. Has lost, sensation from the chest downwards 10 years before. So these are some of the examples. Another one recently, in Arizona, a self-driving Uber car has killed a pedestrian. This is the first incident involving a pedestrian with a self-driving car. The circumstances surrounding the accident are still not very clear, but this incident also highlights the important development of replacement of human with machines. A self-driving car is a machine which is supposed to have the ethical intelligence and social awareness of a human driver. I mention ethics because at some point, the driverless car will have to make a decision between running over a rich entrepreneur or a group of homeless people. Why do I mention this? I'm merely trying to show that in our times, an engineer can no longer restrict themselves to hard technical matters. What the foregoing also demonstrate is that the boundaries between professions is becoming a blur. Transdisciplinarity is becoming a norm. And therein lies the challenge for a young, radical, and disruptive engineer. It no longer suffices for an engineer today to be a master of machines without a clear understanding of the humanities. In other words, engineers should be more mindful that science and technology is about the people out there and making their life prosperous and their conditions more livable. The Department of Science and Technology is in the process of completing the development of a white paper which will set a long-term policy direction for the South African government to ensure a growing role for science, technology, and innovation in a more prosperous and inclusive society. One, science and technology and innovation to be the catalyst in improving service delivery and decision-making in public policy, increasing competitiveness of existing firms, forming new technology-based firms, modernizing existing industries, developing emerging industries, improving the quality of life of South Africans through improved health and educational outcome, and exploring new sources of growth, such as green growth. It must also be borne in mind that increased role of STI, as we call it, will lead to decreased human labor absorption. Our national innovation system has made significant progress between 1996, when the first white paper on science and technology was introduced, and in 2016, when the first white paper on science and technology was introduced in 2016. We have expanded our STI institutional landscape, a threefold increase in publications, significant growth in participation of Black people and women in research and development workforce, and a rise in doctoral graduation. However, our NSI still faces challenges. The NSI is still not fully inclusive, and our innovation performance, as measured in patents and products, have been relatively flat. This is where we need radical and disruptive young people to contribute by shaking up our innovation system. We want to see more young people developing new industries backed by science and technology research so that we can grow our economy. Hence, the new white paper has introduced a number of policy shifts, which include the first one, in no particular priority areas, increase in the focus of transformation and inclusivity, enhancing innovation, culture in society and government, supporting grassroots innovation, endorsing open data, open science, and open innovation approaches, supporting inter- and transdisciplinary approaches to knowledge development. When you leave this gathering, colleagues, tonight, you need to ask yourself these questions. What is it that a young, radical, disruptive engineer can do to ensure that as a country, we create a future that brings prosperity to all in an environment where machines will be doing most of the work? In a country like ours, wherein the challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality have arrested human progress, what is it that transdisciplinary engineer can do to fight these challenges? I'm happy today, colleagues, because I'm addressing the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, because I'm quite certain that my confidence in your ability to find a solution to our problem is not misplaced. As I've already mentioned, engineers and engineering have always been at the center of industrial revolution and human progress. As I conclude, I want to go back to the point I made by the young Karl Marx, that the chief guide which must direct us in the choice of a profession is the welfare of mankind and our own perfection. We are all engineers within a society, the South African society, with all its problems. I was encouraged that your stated mission as institute is to provide leadership to the electronic engineering discipline in order to support its members in becoming more effective practitioners so that the quality of life of all communities in the Southern Africa is uplifted. As we heed to the call by the President that says, let us lend a hand, I'm here to say as well, shall you lend a hand in assisting us in finding the solutions to our challenge? This tells me that you are quite aware of your responsibility to our country as a profession, and I'm confident that you will indeed respond to our call. Thank you very much.
For a long time, I don't really follow trends as much, but just 2 days ago, I went to the cinema and watched the much talked about Black Panther movie. One thing that struck me with the Black Panther movie was a group of the defenders of Wakanda, this fictional, highly technologically advanced country in Africa, the Dora Milaje. I think Hollywood has stolen our styling because they've styled the Dora Milaje in the picture that you have chosen to represent, well, you as the representative of the Department of Science and Technology. We actually used that picture for this invitation. So thank you for being the defender of science and technology in this country and borrowing the styling or lending Hollywood the styling of science and technology for future generations. Honorable Minister, we're very encouraged by the themes that you've picked in your speech, that of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. We want to assure you that as the Institute, we've actually resolved to be involved in the shaping of the Fourth Industrial Revolution in South Africa. So much so that the main conference that will be held next year by the SAIEE will be around the Fourth Industrial Revolution. You would also know that the Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, as well as the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Internationalization, are fellows of the Institute. So we are indeed equipped and capable of assisting the country moving forward. The center, being radical, young, and innovative, has also dealt with issues of digital migration and digital terrestrial television. We recently held a panel discussion to discuss an ideal implementation of digital terrestrial television in the country. We've previously held conferences or talks on the Internet of Things. The Institute has held a conference on smart grid. And our recent Bernard Price lecture dealt actually with the issue of machine bias. So being able to choose between this rich entrepreneur or an old person to assist. So we are geared as the Institute to assist the country moving forward.